Big news, everyone. The Society of Massage Archives is officially a 501c3 nonprofit. Greetings. I am Kirby Clark Ellis, president of the Society of Massage Archives. This is a huge milestone, not just for us at SOMA, but for the entire massage therapy community. SOMA is dedicated to preserving and sharing the rich history of our profession, from rare documents and forgotten pioneers to the stories that have shaped this vital practice. We are making sure that our past is never lost. And now, as an official nonprofit, your support of the Society of Massage Archives means more than ever. Your donations are tax deductible, helping us to collect, digitize, and share the untold stories of massage therapy. Want to be a part of history? Here's how you can help. Become a founding supporter. Join our Founders Campaign and be recognized as one of the first 50 donors who made SOMA possible. Or become a recurring contributor when you pledge $20 or more to help us build and sustain this initiative for generations to come. Finally, you can help us out a great deal by spreading the word. Share this video and encourage others to preserve massage history. Your support ensures that future generations of therapists know where we came from and where we're going. Join the Founders Campaign today at societyofmassagearchives.org and make history with us. The past is in our hands. Let's preserve it, one story at a time. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the Society of Massage Archives. These interviews and commentaries represent the recollections of both the hosts and the guests, and as such, are subject to the occasional slight inaccuracies. The content here is for informational and educational purposes only. You should conduct your own historical research when determining the veracity of any of the statements made within.
Greetings, and welcome to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives, where we delve into the rich tapestry of massage therapy's past, explore its evolution, and share the stories that have shaped this vital practice. Today is Monday, November 3rd, 2025. I am your host, Kirby Clark Ellis, and I'm joined today with Donelda Leverick. Dr. Donelda Gowan Leverick holds a Bachelor of Arts honors degree in psychology, a Master of Science degree in Community Health and Epidemiology, and a Doctorate in Population Health Science from the University of Saskatchewan. She also has a diploma from the Canadian College of Massage and Hydrotherapy in Sutton, Ontario. Donelda is currently a director in the Center for Integrative Medicine in the Department of Community Health and Epidemiology in the College of Medicine at the University of Saskatchewan, where she holds an Adjunct Professor appointment. She is the past research chair on the board of directors of the Massage Therapist Association of Saskatchewan and the past chair of the Canadian Interdisciplinary Complementary and Alternative Medicine Research Network. Donelda's career in the massage therapy field spanned 3 decades. She thoroughly enjoyed the clinical work as a massage therapist and ended the hands-on portion of her career in recent years to pursue greater involvement in knowledge translation and exchange. She recalls joyful experiences as a massage therapy educator in both pre-service and continuing education for massage therapists, and as a volunteer in leadership roles on various committees and boards provincially, nationally, and internationally. She is now a health service researcher and knowledge broker. Her main research interests include integrative healthcare and interprofessional collaboration, and always massage therapy. Welcome, Donelda.
Thank you, Kirby. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the introduction. I appreciate it.
Yes, of course. There's a lot to get through in that, so I can't wait to jump in. Let's start at the beginning, though. What pulled you into the world of massage therapy in the first place?
I graduated from high school in Ontario, Canada in 1985, and I distinctly remember seeking guidance counseling, or maybe not seeking it. Maybe it's sort of forced on you when you're in high school. There's some guidance counseling. Someone's role is to try and guide these people as a side to their teaching responsibility. And my joke, my tongue-in-cheek answer is that in the mid-'80s, as a female, your choices for career that you were offered were you could either be a teacher, a secretary, or a nurse. And I didn't really want to be any of those 3 things. It didn't seem to appeal to me. And so I remember my mother, and I want to remind you and listeners that this was rural Ontario in the 1980s. And rural Ontario in the 80s was very rural. It was very different than it is today. And my mother had fallen and fractured her arm. And our family GP in Owen Sound, Ontario, referred her to a massage therapist for care of her shoulder and her neck and the symptoms that she was having of pain and lack of mobility associated with this acute fracture. So that was the first indication, that was the first introduction that I or my family had ever had to massage therapy, that there was even such a thing as massage therapy. And I was instantly intrigued.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Donelda, that introduction that the GP recommended for your mother, do you feel like that was pretty unique for that rural setting?
Absolutely. Again, neither she nor I, the rest of our family, had ever even heard of something called massage therapy or that there was a massage therapist. So pretty progressive of that GP, and especially for something like a acute traumatic injury, a fracture, and very progressive. And so that was, that was really the first that we even had heard of it. And I was, coming into grade 11, grade 12, thinking about what I wanted to do. Again, sort of the rurality of this area of Ontario that I grew up with, my own family history. None of us, I was the youngest of 6 children, none of my siblings had been to university. None of my siblings had been to advanced education. This was a rural area, a lot of farming. Most people stayed pretty close to home. And quite frankly, the idea of university was terrifying. It was clear that I wanted to do something in health sciences. I'd always been the kid bandaging the bird and the friend at the party putting band-aids on people's wounds. And I knew that health sciences interested me. I liked the idea of biology, pathology, physiology. Truthfully, I was absolutely intimidated by the idea of going on to university. Funny thing, of course, then I spent a bit of time there.
A couple of things are coming up for me. I think, first of all, just to get it out of the way, Donelda, I want to ask, was there any form of tradition of caretaking in your family? Any of that examples set up for you from the get-go?
No, no,
But you
no.
always had an interest in, it sounds like you took on this caretaker role in your youth.
Yeah, the health aspect of it, the health science aspect. I think I have always been I was a curious kid. How does this work? And certainly the natural world interested me, and people within the natural world interested me. So it was always a direction towards health sciences. I never had any drive to be in it, it was always going to be health sciences in my.
Gotcha. And then to go back to your mother's fracture injury, can you recall or were you aware of, did she have any apprehensions following this GP's recommendation of working with a massage therapist?
Yeah, I think she did, just the uncertainty, what was this going to be like? And I remember her talking to me about it afterwards, which is kind of a remarkable thing too, because teenagers don't really recall much conversation of anything with their parents during that time. But I remember her talking about it and describing, like what was this going to be like? My mother being, a modest woman, what was this experience going to be like? And I remember her speaking about it, and it was comfortable. And the therapist that she saw was a man and was very professional, and she felt really positive about the experience. And she was the one that said, "I think that's something you would be good at."
Awesome. Well, it's good and kudos to that practitioner for, being able to take a moment of hesitation or apprehension and turning that into not just a positive experience, it sounds like for your mom, but something that opened pathways for you as well, right?
Well, I think they were pretty used to the apprehension. It was a very different experience in the culture of massage therapy in the 80s. My goodness, that was a long time ago, Kirby.
Not too terribly long, but some time has definitely passed, right? Do you get to go back to Ontario at all?
Yeah, certainly. I'd love to visit family there, and
I'm sure it sounds like it's probably grown a bit then, since
Absolutely.
you mentioned like limited options, this really introduction to massage therapy. I want to, and then like this, I'm just going to call it a fear, and I can certainly relate to that too, of, breaking out of our comfort zone and going, biting the bullet and considering university. So I'm wondering how those three aspects all came into play for you, and what really, if there was a specific moment, experience, or person that really helped push you out of that apprehension.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. Thanks. And I do think about it and have thought about it in terms of how our own experiences inform our perceptions of things going on in the world. And I'll tell you, there is one simple case study in my own life about the power, the influence, or the barriers created by a lack of representation. So if you look out in the world and you don't see one, how can you imagine being one? And so certainly there was that apprehension. As much as there was apprehension and fear as a kid, I was pretty sure that this wasn't the place for me to stay. And I think my mother was pretty sure that this little bird should probably fly. So she was very encouraging. I remember her driving me to Toronto. And again, at that point in time, Toronto might as well have been on the other side of the moon. We did not go to the city for any particular reason. It was, it was quite removed from our life. And I remember her driving me to Toronto to go to an open house at a massage therapy college in Toronto. I can't remember the name of that one. It's not the one that I ended up choosing. I think she maybe took me to two or three. And again, I was 17. And so I needed adult guidance and supervision. And she, of course, wasn't going to just release me to the world. And so I remember her, being alongside me, taking me to these places, us having a look at, where would be an appropriate place to go? Where did she feel safe to send a kid? And where did I feel brave enough to go to? So I ended up choosing the Canadian College of Massage and Hydrotherapy, which at that time, they had a campus in a small town north of Toronto, probably about an hour on the 407, I think it was. So it was a small town. So it was really a good fit. I was able to ease into, this whole adulting experience and being out on my own, but also I had a car and it was only an hour to Toronto. So I spent time there as I spread my wings.
Can you think back, what did the conversation, when you made the decision, I think I want to become a massage therapist, I at least want to get some education on it. Can you remember that conversation with your mom, or how that kind of went? Because it sounds like she was supportive for you, and I'm
Yeah,
sure that experience with the massage therapist helped that.
yeah, no, they were supportive for sure. I remember, my mother and father, saying that they would decision. There was a huge amount of financial support because it was a private college, so tuition was expensive. I needed a place to live. I was kind of a spoiled kid. I had an extravagant lifestyle. And so they invested heavily in my college education. And I'll tell you, in all sincerity, I have been grateful every day of my life since, because they afforded me that opportunity to become a massage therapist. I then used that skill and resource to fund my own continuing education and that of other members of my family, my offspring and ex-husband. And I am always grateful to my parents.
Excellent. So talk to me about those early days at school, the college there, just outside of Ontario, you said?
Just outside of Toronto, so just north of Toronto in a small town called Sutton, Ontario.
What did the instructors look like? Was there just one? Did you have like a cast of instructors?
Yeah, there was a wonderful slate of instructors. The dean of the college was a Hungarian woman named Edith, and I'll mispronounce her last name, and I'm so sorry. I think it's pronounced Saz, and she was amazing. She was a diminutive character with a giant personality, and she was both ferocious and hugely big-hearted. And she was the dean of the school, so she brought the curriculum, the resources from a European tradition. So that's how we were trained, was in that European tradition of Swedish massage, and the hydrotherapy component of it was big. So we were doing some of these elaborate and amazing European water-based treatments, and it was so amazing to just get immersed in that. And it was a typical program at the time in Ontario. There was literally a handful of schools, and they all had very similar curriculum, I would think. At that point in time, we were in an hours-based system, so it was a 2,200-hour curriculum, which was the requirement for becoming a massage therapist within underneath the regulation of the Drugless Practitioners Act and all of the political structure that went around that. And the instructors were amazing. Lynn Filkins was an English woman who I believe went on to create a school in Hawaii, and I've certainly lost touch with that. But she had a, us as a group of students in the palm of her hand. We couldn't do enough. We were so motivated to learn from her. She was an absolutely magnificent teacher. Talk about being primed and ripe and thirsty for knowledge, and having somebody just, able to just deliver it to you. She was magnificent. And there were others, Tillman Vonderland. And again, a lot of the European-based educators. Tillman Vonderland was from Germany. Yeah, we had a slate of people teaching pathology. We had a number of chiropractors that were on staff, some nurses that were on staff. I made friends in the class of massage therapy college that I still have today.
Awesome. I'm really latching onto, Donelda, is this idea of cultural influences, specifically European culture. Do you know much about your dean's history? What brought her from Hungary to Canada?
Absolutely nothing. I know absolutely nothing.
Is she still around? Is she still with us, or is she
She's
passed?
deceased. Yeah, yeah,
Gotcha.
she's passed. Yeah.
All right. And then I'm wondering if you could speak to maybe a little bit more in depth about those cultural influences, either, Hungarian-based approach, the hydrotherapy, I'd love to hear more about, and then also like these English and German teachers that you were also surrounded by.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I certainly suspect and would understand that, that they would have brought these influences. But I think massage therapy education in Canada at that time was all very much a European based therapeutic massage approach. At that point in time, I know a little bit about the history of massage now, but I didn't, at the time, I wouldn't have been aware that this is sort of one epistemology, this is one worldview of massage therapy, but there are others. I wouldn't have known that. This was what was available, and this was what the foundation of massage therapy education in Canada, and it still is.
Gotcha. About the hydrotherapy, were there specific techniques that you feel were kind of unique to your entry level education that perhaps other schools weren't getting? Were there special equipments that they were using?
Gosh, I don't know what other schools had. I know that we had this amazing building. It was, this brick and mortar building, and the one level was all hydrotherapy, and so we had all the things that are now pretty have moved from novelty to mainstream, right? Like we had cold plunges, we had blitzgusses, where you sort of line people up like a firing squad with cold hoses. So all the cold diffusion therapy that's big right now, we were learning to do. And there's beautiful traditional things like mustard plasters and like body wraps with like linen and cotton, and oh my goodness, there was just some really interesting traditional healing practices. Yeah, I think we really sort of saw them as very much part of a deliberate, practical. This is going to come in handy for the treatment of musculoskeletal disorders. It was really pretty cut and dry.
I'm curious about this because especially with like our cultural differences, across the border, were there any specific texts or textbooks that were used in your education that maybe I've never even heard of?
Well, I'm going to guess that you probably have heard of them because I think, there was kind of a standard slate. We had Tidy's, I'm looking up at my bookcase here, Tidy's Remedial Massage. And it was, sort of the tradition of when physiotherapy and massage therapy were actually sort of sister professions. And so it was a physiotherapy textbook, but physiotherapy at the time had a little bit more hands-on component. And I'm talking about when the textbook was published, which I'd have to grab it off of my bookshelf to say, but suffice it to say, like a long time ago. And then we had, Hoppenfeld's was an assessment text, and for orthopedic assessment, and those were really the mainstays. And no doubt, the dean, probably created a chunk of the curriculum, and then the instructors would have created a chunk of the curriculum as well. So those are the main textbooks that I remember. I remember them being pretty dry, pretty dusty, but I was a kid and it was all fascinating. So
It sounds like they kept you engaged.
for sure they did. Now, any of my classmates that would be listening would be holding themselves and thinking this is hysterical. Because as I said, I did have a car and Toronto was only an hour away. So I may have I may have been a part-time student as in actuality. There's a lot of fun things going on in Toronto. I wasn't a terribly diligent student, which is an admission.
Well, it sounds like you've certainly made up for that in the time since, right? Speaking of fun and a lot of interesting things going on, from your days in massage therapy school, are there any quirks, memories, or surprises from that time that still stick with you to this day?
There's been a really full life within my professional career, Kirby, since I graduated in 1987. But I left Ontario in 1987. Graduated and packed up my car and left Ontario and moved west, moved to Saskatchewan, and I came. Massage therapy is what brought me here. I met a chiropractor at the Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College in Toronto. We were at an event that my school in Sutton had sent students. I think it was a cadaver lab. So the chiropractic college had an anatomy lab. We were granted permission to come and watch. Then after hours, I think there was a social, and I met a chiropractor who was from Saskatchewan. And at that point in time, the education of a massage therapist in Ontario was somewhat of a novelty to a chiropractor based in Saskatchewan. So the culture, as you say, in between massage therapy in Ontario and the culture of massage therapy in Saskatchewan was vastly different. And so this individual was intrigued and thought, I mean, I'm speaking for her. I don't know exactly what she thought, but the impression that I got was that having me join her practice in Saskatchewan would be sort of a feather in her cap. Here would be this novel inclusion. I think, to the best of my knowledge, that I was the first massage therapist to work with within a chiropractic office in Saskatchewan. And I may be incorrect, but I'm pretty sure that was the case, at least in Saskatoon, in our main city. So that's what brought me here to Saskatchewan. It was the opportunity to join this office, do some interesting things. And there were some social and personal fun things going on too. I had met someone that I wanted to join in Saskatchewan, and that's the way life goes.
For sure. That sounds like a huge life adjustment, but also like this huge period of transformation for you. Also, you're becoming a massage therapist, you're out of school, you're making this huge move out west to Saskatchewan, from your home base is what I'm understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, but so I'm just wondering, and this is probably just as good a place as any to bring up this question, this elephant in the room. I can't find, and it could just be me not being adept, but I'm not finding a clear-cut answer. Is Saskatchewan a regulated province in Canada for massage?
No, it is not. So when I came out here in the late 80s, and I'm going to share this story because this is a history podcast, and I think that reflecting on the past, even if the past in history is literally only a few decades, the transformation of the field, the evolution of the field from the 80s until now is pretty mind-blowing and really fascinating. So no, Saskatchewan is not a regulated province. It wasn't then and it isn't now. So when I came out here, truthfully, I was met with some conflict. It's very clear to me in reflecting back on that time now that no, we did not know anything about one another. So there was a lot of miscommunication. There was a lot of misunderstanding. I think, in the Saskatchewan field, there was probably mistrust too. I came to Saskatchewan. I wanted to be part of the massage therapy community here. I was ready to do whatever jump the hoops, do whatever was required to become part of the profession here. And I will say, sort of a sidebar to that, Saskatchewan has always been an extraordinary exemplar of what massage therapy can hold for capacity against huge barriers of not being a regulated province.
Mm.
And that is due to the talent and the dedication and the intelligence of a group of massage therapists in Saskatchewan. And in my case, the involvement would have been the Massage Therapists Association of Saskatchewan. But at that time, that association wasn't even formed yet. And so it was a very confusing, little bit hostile environment in those first few years. There's misunderstandings on, what was the education in Ontario. I came here, there was no brick and mortar school in Saskatchewan for massage therapy. It was a correspondence course through a European school. And so time frame didn't mean anything to anybody either. And I mean, it doesn't really mean that much now. But in Ontario, we had set stock on, okay, we've got this 2,200-hour curriculum. It means it's going to take you 2 years or 18 months if you go consecutively. And there was some uniformity in the curriculum, and then there was a path. Once you graduated, you would challenge a board exam. It was an exam set by the board of directors of the Drugless Practitioners Act of Ontario, and through that process, if you were successful, you would become a registered massage therapist. So in Saskatchewan and other unregulated provinces, I would assume there was not that. There was a process in place, but it was really difficult to transition because no one knew enough about what was happening in other provinces to be able to sit down and say, okay, here's the commonalities, here's the similarities, so I mean, I came in and there were a lot of, let me just say, there was considerable barriers to belonging, to becoming a part of this community. And I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. That was the weird culture of the time, and we were all completely ignorant of what everybody else was doing. So I'm quite certain I was likely unhelpful.
A couple of things are coming up, two major trains of thought, so bear with me. First of all, it sounds like there was some sort of formality to becoming a massage therapist in Saskatchewan at the time. Perhaps it wasn't regulated and wasn't quite as, I don't know if robust is the polite way to put it, but it was totally different than what you had coming from Ontario. And then the other train of thought that I'm tracking is, do you feel like those barriers transitioning from one province to another have gotten easier in recent years?
Well, they haven't gotten significantly easier to the extent that we don't have a uniform national standard of education and practice, which, the development of which became my life's work as a scholar.
No big deal, right?
So no, it isn't demonstrably easier now than it was then. However, having said that, and again, I want to be clear that there are there were then and there are now some people doing magnificent work at the provincial level to create that deep conversation and connection with other provinces, in order to learn. Well, in the interdisciplinary world, we talk about it as learning from, with, and together with another group, and so that certainly is something that is evident now, and so there's great strides in that. But no, I mean the bottom line is that you still can't transition from one region to another if you don't have uniform standards or a uniform system of credentialing and expectations for normalization of what a massage therapist looks like from one place to the next.
It sounds like I'm wondering, maybe while I think of formulate a question in my head coherently, could you speak to maybe some of those barriers or what you really had to do to be able to start working in Saskatchewan with what you got
Yeah.
in Ontario?
Yeah, well, for sure, and again, I think so much of it really boiled down to miscommunication, sort of a lack of connection too, so I mean, it all sorted itself out, right? And not without some animosity at the time, which was that wouldn't be the case. So I'm not in any way suggesting that there's any animosity present. I don't believe that there is. Now the animosity or the conflict will be barriers played out on a little larger sphere. So the barriers that you speak about to inclusion and moving forward, I think come down to what they probably did then too: competing visions and competing interests. And we're in the same place today, unfortunately.
And maybe this isn't a fair question just to put on you as one individual, Donelda, but is there a reason that Saskatchewan has remained unregulated up to this point? Could you opine on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I should tell you, a little bit of my involvement, and where my opinion uh, on the situation, what informs that opinion. So when I came to Saskatchewan in the late '80s, I became a massage therapist here, and joined the association, and shortly thereafter. Um, I, at the time, I was also working on an undergraduate degree in psychology, had applied to the University of Saskatchewan, and was accepted. And then the political environment here in Saskatchewan was really starting to move forward. And I say political, and I don't know if that's the right word, really, honestly. The culture, I guess, maybe is better in terms of massage therapy. And so in 1995, I think maybe it was, I was invited to teach at what was then again, one of a handful of brick and mortar schools that had been created in the province. And I was invited to come and teach because, again, the word was that there was this massage therapist with the 2,200-hour curriculum from Ontario, working on an undergraduate degree, seemed probably like a good fit to become a massage therapy educator. I'm so delighted with that opportunity because I have, it was an amazing experience. I taught at the Professional Institute of Massage Therapy in Saskatoon from 1995 until I think 2003. And then all that time, there was involvement, there was communication, there was interaction with the professional association here. And truthfully, it was pretty conflictual. So schools and educators, maybe not educators so much, but schools and students seeking to understand, where were they going? Where was the profession going? So I was, as an educator and a practitioner, and interacting, engaging with the professional association, and trying to meet students' needs, trying to further my vision for the profession and to work within that culture. So when I left my teaching position in 2003, I joined the Provincial Association and I became the education director on the board of directors of the Massage Therapists Association of Saskatchewan. And then, I proceeded, like, with their support, we proceeded to do some good things. We believed improving the examination process for students graduating from the massage therapy programs to become members of the Massage Therapy Association. And there's where the corollary comes with regulation. So when I speak with such great and profound respect about the Massage Therapists Association of Saskatchewan, is because they played that role of shepherding that process of how do you evaluate knowledge and how do you ensure that the standards of practice that are going to be delivered in this province meet the expectations of excellence, of good care. And so they took that on. I was happy to be part of that process. So I served as the education director for a number of years with the Massage Therapy Association of Saskatchewan. And then that's how it kind of springboarded me into some of the next things.
When you were invited to teach in 1995, was that your first teaching experience?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. And so that would have come like exactly 1 decade after first starting your own massage therapy education, right?
Yeah. Yes. And at the same time, I was just finishing up an undergraduate degree in psychology, and this was an honors degree. So at that point in time, and I know the system has changed a little bit now, but at that point in time, a 4-year degree in psychology required a research thesis component. And so, in reflection, it's lovely to consider how these things intersect in life. So I was teaching at the college, and I had the most amazing group of students. I've had many years of amazing groups of students, but it's funny how, there's just the I don't know, the collective sort of camaraderie that can come through. So in my final 2 years of the undergraduate degree, I was to produce an honors thesis. And so I found a supervisor at the University of Saskatchewan. I have a story about that I tell about. At that time, I had to overturn quite a few rocks to find someone interested in supervising a research project on massage therapy. I got a lot of no's, people not interested, either in psychology or other areas. But I did find someone in ed psych, and together we designed this a fabulously fun study. We did a little mini randomized controlled trial. I had my students prepped and prepared for a specific I don't know what you want to call it, almost like a routine. So there was a standardization of the treatment that was applied. We had our treatment group, we had a control group, and then we had another active control group. And I was looking at the effects of massage on activation. So it was a theory of Thayer on arousal states. So calm energy versus tense energy. And so we conducted this experiment using the students, and interestingly, we actually found positive results. We were able to show that the massage group had positive benefits and compared to the control group. And sadly, I never published anything from that work. At the time, I didn't have the confidence, and at the time, I did not have the mentors in place that arrived in my life shortly thereafter that catapulted my confidence and capacity well beyond that undergrad work.
Inspired or really want to give you kudos for is that it looks like each one of your degrees, you had a thesis that related in some way to massage therapy as its central question, right? And I don't know if we want to get into it or if we want to take it, we can muddle the timeline a little bit if we wanted to and talk about each one, but uh, each time you're writing about massage therapy, you're researching massage therapy for these academic degrees, and I just think that's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. And thinking about it, now in retrospect, with the psych degree, I think I don't know that I think it was just sort of a natural, a natural inclination, a natural thought. I was interested still, like having a thimble full of knowledge on research and massage therapy even. At that point in time in my career, I was intrigued, I was interested, like how does this work? Like, are there theories in place that would explain what you and I think we know that massage therapy does? And so I think that was sort of a natural fit. But I will tell you the master's degree and the master's thesis and the doctoral dissertation were very deliberate choices made out of an intention to hopefully help and drive the profession in a specific direction or forward or in a specific trajectory. And that came about, I mentioned about mentors, and that came about again, the Massage Therapists Association of Saskatchewan, because I was in that leadership role as the director of education. I now remember this day as though it was yesterday. There was a meeting. We received word that there was going to be a research conference in Toronto. And I remember making some sort of an offhand comment, sure would be nice to go to that. And I remember one of the other directors saying, well, would you like to go? Like that's the kind of thing that we do. We could send you to that. And if you have patience for this story, Kirby, I'll tell you, like, that was such a transformative time in my life. I went to this research conference. It was hosted by INCAM, which is the Canadian Interdisciplinary Network of Complementary and Alternative Medicine. And I sat in the audience, and I think of it now as sort of like a cartoon or a film, where words are flying through the air, and my hair is blowing back as this knowledge is being opened up on me like a fire hose, and I was thrilled. I was hooked. I remember, tapping with my elbow the person beside me. What does that mean? What are they saying? I didn't know what they were saying, but I knew I wanted to know what they were saying. There were people standing on the stage from medicine, from nursing, from pharmacy. There was even a massage therapist standing on the stage speaking about her research. And this is where we come back to the C1B1. And I was blown away. And I knew that it was a world that I didn't understand, but I was captivated by how intense and broad and expansive the people and the topics that the people were talking about were. So yeah, so and in my undergrad work, I was a pretty reluctant researcher. I remember understanding that the requirements to graduate with an honors degree in psychology was that there was going to be a research thesis. And I remember being terrified because I was pretty sure that research was probably terribly hard and it was probably terribly boring. And I have learned since that it is, in fact, terribly hard.
Is it terribly
But
boring?
it is anything but boring.
Well, exciting. I'm wondering, the first thing that's coming up for me just on the heels of that answer, do you feel like you would have ever found that way to research without perhaps the structure and the support found at a university or a degree program?
That's a really interesting question. Probably not, because it's sort of astounding, isn't it, how you can be moving about in your sphere in life and be unaware of the fact that, moving in just the adjacent circle are people doing things that you don't know anything about. So I'll tell you, the main mentor that I met in Toronto was Trish Dryden. And she was instrumental in, shepherding and ushering a number of us forward in the research sphere in massage therapy in Canada and as a consequence in the USA as well. And so I remember after that conference speaking with Trish Dryden, and again, she was someone, with whom I held this reverence and awe. I didn't know anybody. She had a master's degree at the time. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know any massage therapist with a master's degree, and I certainly didn't know any massage therapist who was working in collaboration with all these other people that I could see doing really magnificent things. You know who else was at that conference was Janet Kahn. And I had heard the name of Janet Kahn in the 80s when I was in massage college. And again, this was a name spoken with reverence and awe because no one, including myself, knew a massage therapist with a PhD. And no one but, including myself, knew that there was a massage therapist doing research. So I met Janet Kahn at that conference. And if Janet Kahn listens to this, she will either giggle or roll her eyes at just how I was so afraid that I wouldn't remember my own name in speaking to her, and or that I would, I don't know, spill coffee on her or something like that. So these were the people that I would, that I had exposure to, and then those people, I remember after the conference or at the conference saying to Trish Dryden, Trish, I don't know exactly what's going on here. It's thrilling and exciting. It's all blowing over my head, but I know that I want to be a part of this. And she said the words, good. Now go get the formal education so that you can contribute. And then she said, in Saskatoon, there are individuals that I will connect you with at the University of Saskatchewan, and you need to know them. And that's exactly what happened. And one of them became my supervisor, and the other became a committee member and my colleague, well, my boss, really, now. So in answer to your question, yeah, absolutely. Being in that environment, both the university and the interprofessional conference, without that, how would I have ever had that exposure?
Right. I just want to make sure that I'm kind of piecing the timeline in my head, at least, correctly. It sounds like this was happening at around the time of your BSH, yes?
And it was actually a BA honors. Interestingly, psychology was in the Bachelor of Arts program here. I had finished that, so this was early 2000s. So I'm not sure the date. Maybe 2004, maybe 2005, 2006. So This was my first research conference, but I think it might have been the second conference of the INCAM Research Network, which is, by definition, an interdisciplinary research network of individuals interested in complementary integrative alternative forms. So the researchers part of this network were osteopaths, naturopaths, chiropractors, but also, people with interest, so people from pharmacy. So it might have been maybe the second. And then also there were some international things going on, but I hadn't yet been a part of that. So this was my first induction into that world.
It sounds like that's happening right around the time that you finished your first teaching gig. Were you still teaching at the time? Had you transitioned to a different teaching position, or?
I left the teaching position at the school and I created a continuing education company called Education Initiatives Canada. My intention was to transition into post-grad or working with massage therapists around the country. I developed some materials, and there was 1 and 2 day workshops. Topics, some of them were what people would consider review. So assessment of body regions, clinical assessment of the neck. And so again, using a modern curriculum that I knew based on my own involvement, from school and from developing curriculum for the undergrad, for the pre-service students, that this had never really been part of curriculum, because there either wasn't enough time or it wasn't sort of the culture of the time. So some of it was, in retrospect, I think it was a bit dry. But yes, it was, it was assessment of the neck, assessment of the shoulder, assessment of the hip. But it was fun for me because, you get to use your knowledge of anatomy, physiology, pathophysiology, and sort of create that along. And then I created some resources that were a bit specialty, like dealing with motor vehicle accidents, which was a really big thing. There was a lot of controversy about whether massage therapists should be involved in that. And, there was a lot of the political culture around the climate around MVAs, motor vehicle accidents and collisions in massage therapy was tumultuous. I haven't thought about that in years, but yeah, so that was a ton of fun. And so that's what I set my goal was to travel around the country, offering these continuing competency or continuing education workshops, and I did that for a number of years, and that was wonderful. That was a really great experience.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if there was much appetite for continuing education in these unregulated provinces, but if you're traveling all over the Canadian country, it sounds like maybe that wasn't as much of a concern or a worry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was certainly, I felt very welcomed in every province in the country, and certainly the need, and of course the need for continuing education was a bit prescriptive too, right? Because people needed continuing competency hours in order to maintain their professional credentialing with whatever their body was. Again, whether they were in a regulated province, the body being the regulators, or whether they were in an unregulated province and the body being these associations that were upholding those standards.
Yeah, that makes sense then. And thank you for clarifying that in my head.
The Society of Massage Archives wishes to congratulate Dr. Patricia Benjamin on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of her book, The Emergence of the Massage Therapy Profession in North America, A History in Archetypes. To honor this milestone, SOMA is launching the Adopt a Box campaign, a last chance to rescue and distribute the physical copies of this essential text before they disappear. You can help get a box of books into massage schools, libraries, practitioners, and educators' hands. And starting soon, join us for the SOMA Book Club.
a monthly conversation where we'll read The Emergence and reflect on the stories, struggles, and triumphs that shaped our profession. Help us preserve massage history and carry it forward.
I wonder if you would like to hear a little bit more about the research for the master's and for the doctoral work, because you are right, it was very much specific to massage therapy.
Please.
So in response to these mentors that I met saying, good, now go get the formal education to contribute, I applied to the master's program in the Department of Community Health and Epidemiology, because that's where these individuals who were involved in the founding of the Interdisciplinary Research Network nationally were located here in my backyard at the University of Saskatchewan. And so I applied. Dr. Ann Lees agreed to take me on and supervise a master's thesis. It was the program in epidemiology was both terrifying and marvelous. Definitely required a lot of intellectual stretch for me, and I loved every minute of it. And so the project that I came up with for my master's thesis was, again, driven by the movements that I could see in the field of massage therapy and the movements that I was participating in driving. So the master's thesis work was on perceptions and research utilization by massage therapists in Saskatchewan. And so we created a mixed methods research study. We wanted to know from the massage therapists what were the perceptions of research. So, and perhaps what were the perceptions of research and did they use research? And so we did a two-pronged study. We were also interested, what are the characteristics of massage therapists who do use research as compared to the characteristics of massage therapists who don't? And again, I mean, these weren't just sort of random thoughts. I was, within a culture of scholarship of healthcare, where we were all interested in the degree to which professions were providing evidence-based care. Nobody cared whether it was massage therapy or nursing or medicine or pharmacy. How much of the care that a patient is receiving is based on evidence. And so the scholarship of evidence-based practice became my thing. And it still is now. It's part of what I do as my work in knowledge translation and as a knowledge broker. What is evidence and how do we conceptualize it and how do we use it? And so I wanted to know the answer to those questions. How do massage therapists in Saskatchewan feel about research and are they using it, and what are the barriers to use, and who are they if they are using it and if they aren't? And so I had tremendous support here within the community of massage therapists as well. I had tremendous support through the Massage Therapy Association. I published a paper in the Journal of Complementary and Integrative Medicine on that work. I presented that research at wonderful conferences in Canada and in the United States. And I was having so darn much fun when I defended in 2010 that I asked my supervisor if she would take me on as a doctoral student. And she said yes.
Can I pause you right there for just a moment?
Sure.
Donelda, before we jump into that? I'm curious, how did the research process, how was it different for your master's compared to your bachelor's? Did you learn a lot from that first research project in your bachelor's that you were able to adjust, or I don't know, just how did you gain more confidence between the two? It sounds like different methods used involved, and I'm just wondering, can you speak to all of that?
I'm giggling, Kirby, just because, and maybe it's different today, and maybe the student in the undergraduate work is like vastly more sophisticated than I was as a undergrad student. And again, there's all the things that you bring with you. never having been in that environment before. So yeah, I would say, the undergrad research work was, it was very simple. My personal grasp of the process was tenuous at best.
Gotcha, for sure. And
You're guided quite a bit in graduate school. You have to stand on your own 2 feet.
oh boy. Great. And well, maybe not to spoil the publication, but what did you learn from the perception and utilization?
Yeah, well, I mean, what we learned was that all the things that we thought about, the culture in flux, turned out to be true. That there was positivity towards research, and again, this was very new in the early part of 2000. Massage therapy and research were two things that not even massage therapists were putting together, let alone physicians and physios and people. And it was a bit of a linchpin for some of the culture wars too, right? So I mean, I was very much in the environment where, you know, there are factions of individuals suggesting that being a research literate, research informed practitioner is a good thing. And others thinking, I want nothing to do with that. If that's what being a massage therapist is about, I don't want anything to do with that. That's not why I became a massage therapist. There was huge conflict. I suspect there still is, but there was huge conflict. There were, as I mentioned right at the beginning of your interview, there were competing visions and there were competing interests. So, so the vision that many of us were promoting and seeing along these lines were certainly not universally adopted. So I wanted to ask those questions. You learn as a scientist that you have to figure out what is known already on the topic, and then you have to figure out some good questions, and then you have to figure out good ways to answer those questions so that you get a reliable answer. So what we found is that the massage therapists largely viewed research positively, and that wasn't universal, but it also was probably different from previous generations, but that they were not typically using research in their practice. Barriers, one of the main ones was research literacy and also access. How do you get a hold of research? How do you understand it? Consequently or subsequently, in the Massage Therapists Association of Saskatchewan, I became the research director. We created journal clubs. We did such fun things. We created something called the Itty Bitty Journal Club, and or the Itty Bitty Book Club, because my thought was that a journal paper is just like a little tiny book. It's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I can help guide you through that, just as if you would be reading the plot of a story. The research literacy doesn't have to be terrifying and so difficult as it can be made out to be. So that's what we largely found, and we found that the characteristics of people using research at the time were, those that were engaged in more full-time practice. It was. My goodness, I've forgotten what some of the other characteristics were. I'd have to go back to the paper.
Gotcha. That's all right. I'm also wondering a couple of things that you said earlier, and if we want to hold off on answering these till a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
I did just think of one other characteristic that is directly related to the question that you asked me. Those with a university degree were more apt to view and positively and utilize research in practice.
I guess.
Sorry, just popped into my head.
Yeah, of course. I'm also wondering, kind of circling around this same question or topic that we're talking about, was there much literature already done at the time that you could look to? Maybe not in massage therapy, but in other professions?
Yeah, from nursing. And I did, in fact, fashion some of the theoretical underpinning, the framework by which you would, embrace a topic, attack a topic, and say, like, how would we apply scholarship to this area, came from nursing. And again, I was very clear at the time that I suspected that massage therapists would be no different than nurses and physicians in the challenges that we have in going from the creation of knowledge through research and applying it to practice. It's difficult. It's challenging. We know that it's the same in all healthcare professions. What is practiced, is very challenging to make sure that is informed by evidence.
Absolutely.
And not just research evidence. Evidence isn't just research. Evidence is also the clinical knowledge that you bring to it. It's also the patient's values and preferences in their unique situation. But that is what clinical reasoning is using evidence-based practice, which doesn't just mean using research. It also means using your clinical skills, and it also means being in a collaborative relationship with your patient.
Beautiful. Yeah. Because sometimes those other two pieces can get lost. Do you know if there's been any additional research to this question of perception and utilization of research in massage? Have people taken your what do they call it, seminal work, and built on top of it, learned more? Has this been
Yes.
visited?
Yeah. I don't have a clear, sort of an answer for you in terms of succession, but I know that the paper has been cited. I can't even give you a number on the citations, but now that you've got me a little bit curious, but I do know that the paper has been cited by other massage therapy researchers in Canada. I also know there is similar work in Australia where that paper was cited, and that's the research process, right? Is that we try to take what is known and we expand it to create further knowledge.
As someone who doesn't, I don't even read research. So I can only imagine that it's got to be pretty exciting when you see a citation come up, right, on work that you've done. Is that exciting?
Sure, it can't not be. Yeah, I think there's a period of time after, and I don't know, with more seasoned and more experienced researchers than I, what they would say about it. I think there's a period afterwards where you're a little bit bowled over by the process, and it maybe takes a little bit of time and separation before you say, yeah, that's true, that's terrific. That is the intention of science and methodology, that ideas are adopted and developed further. But I'm giggling because by the time you get the work done, you're a little bit done. You're a little bit done with it, and then you're moving on to the next thing. But it is exciting for sure.
Awesome. There were a couple things, and let me know if you want to talk about this later. We can put a pin in it. But a couple of things that you brought up that you're going to catch me learning right now. You said scholarship of evidence-based practice. I'm wondering if you can expand on that and maybe explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. And another thing, and again, if this is a little bit premature, we can talk about it later, but I want to have a better understanding of what knowledge translation and being a knowledge broker looks like and means.
Yeah, sure. No, it's great. It's a great time to talk about it, and I love catching people learning, and I love catching myself learning, and love to learn. I love to learn, yeah, certainly, I'm happy to share my thoughts on that. So the scholarship of evidence-based practice is probably something maybe a little bit unique to my academic unit. So it's something that, and perhaps there are others who use that phrase. I don't know, in terms of, meshing scholarship and that very, foundational piece in healthcare, which is evidence-based practice. But we view it as a scholarship meaning that in our minds, this is a huge topic. And within integrative medicine, we think of scholarship as a culture of inquiry, and not just within integrative medicine. Many of my peers that are massage therapy researchers, that culture of inquiry, and not just massage therapy researchers, but leaders in the field, that culture of inquiry where we are a curious bunch and we're interested in teasing apart ideas and thoughts and connecting history and present day and proselytizing for the future based on what we have found. That's what we consider to be the scholarship. And evidence-based practice, when it comes to healthcare, really is about how can we provide the best possible care by rising to excellence in all of the components that go into providing care based on good information, based on knowledge. And where does that come from? So for my portion of the research evidence, that's one of, they call it the pillars or the tripartite legs of a stool in evidence-based practice. One is the research. So, these become fundamental issues of how do you know what you know? And then in scholarship, we blow it up and we say, well, also it's not just how do you know what you know, but what if your worldview is entirely different? What if you come from a different part of the world? What if your culture and background is traditional medicine? What does anthropology have to say about how we know what we know? And what does knowing mean? So these are all things that go into the scholarship of evidence-based practice. And it's a fascinating topic. When we talk about clinical expertise, what is clinical expertise? Are you a clinical expert because you graduated from your massage therapy program? Or can you look at a massage therapist and see the way that they are touching that patient, the way that they are interacting with that individual tells me that they know something. They have some tacit knowledge. I don't even know whether they can articulate it, but we can see that they can see that there's something going on with this human being and there's some interaction going on here that is, sort of magical. How do we articulate that? How do we make sure that, we can teach that we can pass that on? So that might be a bit of scholarship around clinical expertise. And then we talk about the patient's values and the patient's preferences. If you're a patient, you're a client, and you walk in and you say, I really feel like this is the issue with me, I, as a clinician, should be able to say, okay, well, you've got options, but you're in the driver's seat. You get to choose. My recommendation, based on what I know and based on what the research tells me from what has been distilled from knowledge from a larger group, these are your options. This might be the best option based on the outcomes that you want, but maybe it's not for you. Maybe you want this option, and that is part of evidence-based practice. And the scholarship of how do we value people's opinions? We can blow that right up and say how much does the patient, how much does the client have for agency in a therapeutic relationship, and how much does that matter to whether or not they get better? And we actually do know the answers to those questions. And your second question was around knowledge translation and exchange and the knowledge broker piece. Yeah, knowledge translation and exchange is really about how do we take evidence and how do we transfer it from, maybe the researcher to the user. That might be like just one simple sort of piece of knowledge transfer, knowledge translation, but it could also be from a researcher to a patient, or it could be from the clinician to the patient. In my work, in terms of being a knowledge broker and being a knowledge translator and engaged in exchange, for me it's the interdisciplinary piece or the interprofessional piece. So how do I get physicians to know about massage therapy, the benefits and the risks of harm? How do I get policymakers who decide whether they're going to pay for massage therapy for a motor vehicle accident or not to understand the benefits and the risks of massage therapy? Is it worth the dollars that we put in? These kinds of things. So that would be knowledge translation and exchange. And then there might be practical ways that you think about it. Well, like, what does that mean? So you mentioned about like reading or not reading peer-reviewed journal articles. So that's one method of knowledge translation and exchange. We've done fun things. We've done research theater. We did a research theater event in Las Vegas at a conference, an international conference, and a diverse audience of multidisciplinary from around the world. And there was people sitting on the floor. I was one of the actors and one of the creators, and I was supposed to run in from the doorway up to the stage. And I had to figure out when I opened the door how I was going to get there, because the room was packed and there were people sitting on the floor in order to find out what is research theater. And it was so exciting and it was so amazing. And so there's another example when we're talking about knowledge translation and exchange. It doesn't have to be reading a peer-reviewed research article. It could be, how do we exchange knowledge and ideas in creative ways?
Yeah. Well, what is research theater? What does that look like, Donelda?
Well, my only experience of it is what it's looked like anytime we've done it, and it looks different every time. This particular product, this particular offering, and I was just so honored to be a part of it. We did a radio skit where we had myself and my colleague and my boss. We were in a cab, and we were going from one place to another. We were listening to the radio, and on the radio there was a skeptic of complementary, integrative, or alternative medicine, debating with two experts in complementary, integrative, or alternative medicine. And those actors were some pretty heavy hitters in the field. And it was marvelous. So what were we trying to do? We were trying to inspire thought and creative solutions to problems in the world. And that's what research is itself. The conduct of research is a creative process. Knowledge translation can be a creative process as well.
As much as it sounds perhaps ridiculous to hear it that way, it also sounds really profound. This is my first interaction with the idea of research theater, so I appreciate you sharing that with me. I want to know more.
Well, and I'll tell you. I mean, I appreciate the question. I mean, it's one little thing, it's one little morsel, and one quiver, or one arrow in the quiver of things that we've done that have been tremendously fun. In massage therapy research and in integrative health care and medicine research in the last couple of decades.
Gotcha. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about the PhD and the dissertation?
Sure. I know, and I won't belabor it too much, but continuing on again, I was charged, tasked, asked by the Federation of Massage Therapy Regulatory Authorities in Canada at one point in time to write a comprehensive report on the regulation of massage therapy in Canada. And again, it opened, pardon me, it opened all of these questions. And anytime you do things, of course, very often it simply opens more questions than it provides answers. But the questions that process of creating that report, my co-author was Amanda Baswell, who's now Dr. Amanda Baswell, and we were charged with laying out this, the regulatory structure, the historical environment about that in Canada. And from that, of course, come out these issues of risk of harm. What is the risk of harm? Is there harm? Is there a potential for harm in one person massaging another person? And if not, is it necessary to regulate this profession? And so moving into my PhD, I wanted to ask questions about patient safety and harm. And so my question, as always, as a researcher, is what do we know currently about the topic of safety in massage therapy? And I mean, you as a massage therapist, what do we think about the safety of massage? How many times have you had people say, sure, go ahead, try it, can't do any harm? And almost like dismissive, right? Like sure, whatever, can't do any harm. Well, if something can't do any harm, can it also do any good? What are the benefits? What is the research evidence for benefit? Well, if we are interested in that, we probably should be also interested in what is the research evidence for whether or not it can do harm. So I asked that question. What do we know about patient safety in massage therapy? Can it cause harm or not? So that was one part of my project. Then I got looking at how do we define adverse events? How do we define harm in massage therapy? So, if you go back to your schooling, like, did you talk about bad things that can happen in massage therapy? Like, probably, right? Like, are there bad outcomes that you could have? What are ways that this thing could go wrong? And so how do we talk about it? How do we classify it? How do we categorize it? And I quickly found out that there isn't any categorization in massage therapy. And so probably what we need is a taxonomy to structure the classification of when bad things happen. How do we describe them? How do we report them? How do we document them? And how do we learn from them? And because there wasn't anything in massage therapy, what we decided to do was to look at other manual therapies. How do they do it? What are the taxonomies in, first I looked at conventional care, medicine, pharmacy, hospitals. How do they go about managing when bad things happen? And then I looked at other manual therapies because I thought that would be most relevant to massage therapy. So I created a taxonomy of classification, or I created a framework in which a taxonomy could be developed. And then, that was one piece. And then I also, this was also a mixed method study. So there was a quantitative portion and a qualitative portion, as was the case with the master's work. And then I decided to go to the experts. So I considered the experts to be the regulators in Canada. They would have informed opinions about the safety of massage therapy. So I went to the College of Massage Therapists of British Columbia at the time, and I did focus groups asking them about their perceptions of harm or safety in massage therapy. And then from that, we created the dissertation, created a safety model of what would be the constituents, what would be the constituent parts of what safe massage therapy would look like in order to protect against the risks of bad things happening. And that model was published, I'm looking at the textbook here, in Outcome-Based Massage Across the Continuum of Care in the 4th edition of Kristen Andrade's edited textbook.
All right. It sounds really important. In particular, what my mind immediately goes to is that work would have been, or should be, very important for like insurers of like professional liability insurance, a taxonomy of harm or adverse events. That sounds particularly interesting, especially I don't know that we have anything like that.
No. Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, there's a variety of audiences to whom the question should be pertinent about safety, and massage therapists in practice. I think it's an important question for, as you say, for insurers. It's an important question for patients. It's an important question for referrers. It's an important question. And yeah, we don't know the answer to questions until we learn how to ask good questions.
Yeah. I'm also interested in the research process for this question. You mentioned that you worked with the regulators. I'm wondering, were they pretty good collaborators? Were they open?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, they were exceptionally good collaborators. I so appreciate their support and their contributions. Absolutely.
Awesome.
And I should say those collaborators included also the Ontario regulatory folks as well, supporting in different ways. So there was support for the project. Financial support, operational support from different areas of the country, and for that I am very
Awesome. Maybe this would be an interesting question. Which of these three theses or the dissertation, which of these do you feel strongest about? Do you feel maybe most proud of? Which one do you think has
Oh,
contributed?
come on, Kirby, that's a Sophie's Choice question.
I'm sure it is.
I can't pick a favorite.
Okay. Was there one that maybe the outcome surprised you the most?
Um, hmm, that's a really good question. Um, the only way that I would say that there's a surprise in the outcome is that, this is the issue with asking questions. This is the issue with knowledge, and I know, this is sort of just to take the quest for inquiry. You don't know where it's going to take you, so there's constant surprises. So, and one surprise leads to the next surprise. So there's never just one surprise. So in terms of, what is known about safety in massage therapy, I think probably one of the most weird surprises is how much there is for evidence in the literature of really weird, bad things happening. So, and of course, so in peer-reviewed journals, mostly medical journals, most of like really weird things that happen to people as a result of one human being massaging another human being are reports written and published usually by either the hospital care provider or a physician who's writing this up as a case report that says this really weird thing happened. So those cases where, and I mean, it sounds macabre, and don't mean to be delighting in like, really weird, bad things that have happened as a result of massage, but they were certainly surprising, the severity of terrible outcomes that can happen. Now, a lot of this is worldwide, and then of course, the not surprise is that safety incidences, adverse events, are dramatically underreported. So the likelihood of there being innumerable cases that aren't published that I would never be able to read about is big, right? Like I think each of us probably knows a story about somebody who got hurt, but it never goes any further. So it's actually not evidence that I could use. The fact that a client told me that their friends had their ribs broken by a massage therapist. I mean, it's not valuable information from a research perspective. The only thing that I can go on is what is published in peer-reviewed articles. So those are the surprises.
All right. While we're talking about these three research projects, I'm kind of just going to leave you with an open mic. Is there anything that from my limited viewpoint that I haven't asked you about any of them that I should, or that I can open the floor for you to, run with right now?
Well, I think you've done a great job of steering the ship on that discussion. I guess it probably would be wise for us to consider what's the point of these research projects. Why go through this process? Why create this knowledge? And then is the information being utilized? That would be a good question to ask that I wouldn't have the answer for.
All right. Maybe I won't ask you then.
Because I'm not sure. I'm not sure how the information is being used, or if it is being used. I mean, certainly I suspect that the information will be used by other researchers, by up and coming researchers, because they tell me, I read your work. We're looking at a project like this, and that's terrific. But in terms of driving the profession forward, what I would consider forward, what the group of us, with similar worldviews would consider forward, whether that has been effective in doing so, which is always the intent of creating new knowledge, is so that it has some positive benefit for humanity. Whether that is the case or not, I don't know.
Well, this brings me to an interesting fork in the road for a couple of questions that we could go one way or the other with. Um, could I get you to opine? Do you feel like this profession is headed in the right direction currently?
Well, of course, absolutely. Every direction that we move forward, every direction that we move has positive possibilities. I know that's probably about the airy-fairyest answer that you could imagine, but I genuinely do mean it. And again, I can only speak to my involvement, but like from the when the millennium entered, there was a wave of a tsunami of activity in research. My mentor Trish Dryden used to call it research on warp speed, because there was a group of individuals with the support of organizations, and I cannot stress how imperative that is. It's not just individuals; it's the organizations that support those individuals. We did some amazing things. I mean, I'm thinking about this in your opening. We talked about collaboration between Americans and Canadians in massage therapy. Well, over the course of, from the early 2000s up until, or within like 15 years or so, there were so many amazing things going on. There was collaboration with the Massage Therapy Foundation. I had the absolute honor and privilege of serving on the Best Practices Committee with some amazing folks. John Belletto, who was the president of the Massage Therapy Foundation, Michael Ham, Dale Healy, Raven Sarah Trevelyan, Diana Kincaid. This was the committee. And we collectively, we created this World Cafe to invite people. This Seattle, I can't remember the year. It's probably, maybe it was 2010, I think, maybe. And we had, a room full. I think maybe there was 25, 26 massage therapists from around North America, sharing their ideas on the questions. And we were collecting this information. We were collecting this knowledge. We had, and I mean, that's just one example and the reason that I think that it's relevant to your question is that all trajectory, all movement, moves us further down the stream. And so these were really fun things, really, I think, effective and meaningful things. From that World Cafe, there was a white paper. Keith Eric Grant. Oh, I almost forgot Keith Eric Grant. He was the primary author on a white paper from the work from the Massage Therapy Foundation. All this support and all this infrastructure, and then that work was taken up by Anne Blair Kennedy, who created some beautiful work for her dissertation around this. We had research conferences and symposiums in Toronto, back in Seattle, in California, in Vancouver, in Calgary. And again, just all of this meeting. Sometimes we were presenting research, sometimes we were engaged in building the infrastructure for building capacity, for building knowledge translation, for for the generations to come. So do I feel that the international journal was created? I remember sitting down for it was a meeting. We were in Toronto, some of your American colleagues, and we were hashing this out. What is it? What is this going to look like? How? And such exciting times. This is from a dearth to this tsunami of activity, do I think that it's headed in the direction? Well, how could it not? A tsunami is going to leave a lot of things on the beach.
I like that.
In terms of the current day activities, I'm not sure. I would like to say that I have a sense that there are still a lot of barriers to the profession moving forward, and I circle back into competing visions and or conflicting visions and competing interests. And over the years, I've probably softened a little bit on where I stand on some of these issues. I'd like to think that I have greater respect for multiple philosophies and well thought out stands that other people have that might be very much a conflicting view to where I think the profession should be going. But at the end of the day, I will say that competing interests and conflicting views sure can grind you down into preventing you from getting to a place where you think it would be best for patients. And that's where we're supposed to be as healthcare providers. But we have arguments as to whether or not we are healthcare providers.
Right. A whole nother can of worms. I wanted to ask you more about the work with MTF, the Massage Therapy Foundation. It sounds like it was a really exciting time. I'm wondering if there's any specific story or anything that you look back on at that time that you were working closely with MTF that really stands out right now.
Oh, there's so many, Kirby. Like there just are so many. The events that were being created. It felt like a family gathering, like at Christmas time, with all these people, doing such such magnificent work. So there was a symposium in Toronto. Ruth Werner was the president of the MTF at the time, and we were Chris Moyer was there, and the only reason I'm saying this is that like this was part of the only reason that I'm mentioning particular people is because there's concrete outcomes. Trish Dryden and Chris Moyer's textbook sitting on my desk beside me here on evidence-based massage therapy. These are concrete outcomes of meetings like this, where we were laying down or we were asking ourselves to consider the questions of what would an agenda for massage therapy research look like. And obviously, the Canadians and the Americans together, we're wanting to address problems together. We're wanting to solve problems together because we really need to do that. And the collaboration and the camaraderie was spectacular. Some of our Canadians there, I mentioned Amanda Basquill, Anya Kenya Richmond. The three of us were in the process of graduate school, sort of all contemporaries in that. Bodhi Harrelson from Vancouver. These are all people that contributed hugely to the trajectory or the movement of the profession, and I don't know, whether they got the profession to where they wanted it to go, or whether we got it to where we wanted it to go, or not. But those are the events that just sparked joy because it was it was so heady and it was so intense and it was so massive in the undertaking.
Let me see, can we switch gears a little bit? I'm wondering, since we are talking about history, if we can talk a little bit about preserving the past and, future facing wisdom. And transfer of knowledge perhaps is a good place that we can fit in your bailiwick. Are you involved in any sort of collection or preservation of massage history?
Just looking around my office. Just looking around my office. Well, it's funny, because I anticipated that question, and yes, like the things, oh my goodness, the ephemerum, the objects that we have that inspire that recollection of history. So yeah, all of the things that are around me. I had the great pleasure of being an expert reader for Dr. Patricia Benjamin's book, and I know that you interviewed her, The Emergence of Massage Therapy Profession in North America. That was and is a brilliant book. And I was delighted to be a part of the expert reader. We were sort of reading it as it goes along, providing input, which was such an honor and such a pleasure. And I really enjoyed the book. And no offense, but I don't usually find history to be all that interesting.
Not many people do.
Or compelling. I always make two jokes about it. I'm really only interested in history if I'm in it. And I say that as a joke. I think it comes from being the youngest child, in a large family. I'm really only interested in how does this pertain to me and my life. But I say that as a joke. And then my other sort of not so joke, but is kind of also tongue in cheek, is that history isn't always that interesting. As a cisgendered woman, the history of humanity is written about men by men. So we're not in it. Yeah. So it's not all that interesting to me. Sure. And when I do find out about the contributions and the accomplishments of women that were not written about, often quite deliberately swept under the rug, then it just irritates me.
Yeah. Well, maybe this is a good segue to the next question. What do you see as the value, or perhaps, you kind of hinted at it there, the challenge of keeping that history alive?
Oh, I fully admit there's tremendous value. Absolutely, because I just really think that when you are even in the process of producing knowledge and research is the production of knowledge, your first step always is to find out what is known. So we would have great difficulty in having an intelligent discussion about the field of massage therapy if we didn't have people like you curating and accumulating knowledge and wisdom and documents and processes and people and relationships and organizations along the way. So the history is tremendously important. And I think all leaders of all fields and all organizations would say that. Someone has to be the historian. Otherwise, we keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again, simply because we didn't know that was already part of the history, or we have conflict that we maybe could soften. So as I said, I think I've softened over the years in terms of, it doesn't mean that my vision has changed for the profession, but I fully understand that others will come at this topic of where should massage therapy go or where should it be from completely different worldviews and different philosophies. And the history is the thing that informs that understanding. If your worldview is from a human potential movement, you will perhaps view it differently than view the profession differently and where it should be going differently than I might from a European musculoskeletal manual therapy view. And I respect that. I can be in complete conflict with someone in terms of the vision and still respect their philosophical orientation, providing that they are also being intelligent and open and authentic about it as well. So the history is very important.
Sure. Mm. In terms of a practical sense, do you feel like there's an argument to be made for how history can show up in our day-to-day lives as practitioners?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. Um, I think it can't help but, really, so much of what we do is informed by what we have learned, and what we have learned comes from the past. It's the only place it can come from.
All right. When you look back on your career, what are you perhaps most proud of?
Hmm. Um, well, I'll tell you, I am genuinely proud of some of the accomplishments that I, in collaboration with others, have achieved. And I am genuinely delighted with some of the community celebration of those things. So, so there are tangible awards that I'm proud of. Behind me, I have an award, a research award from the Ontario Association, which I'm so proud of, and was awarded relatively recently. I think maybe that was 2018 or something like that. I have a Builder Award behind me from the Massage Therapists Association of Saskatchewan from 2023. Just a unique award. I have a Legacy Award behind me from the Department of Community Health and Epidemiology for recognition of work in trying to draw community in integrative healthcare, where practitioners like massage therapists might be involved in the hallowed halls of the academy in some way or another, and that exchange would be mutually beneficial. So I am very grateful and very, very proud of those celebrations. Probably what I am most proud of in my career is that I feel like I accomplished a mission that I set. I remember being in the airport once, and just being a little bit giddy with all of the excitement. I was probably either going to or coming from a research conference or one of these events that I shared with you with collaboration with all these people, and a mission just landed in my head that I wanted to spend as much time as possible in my life engaging with intelligent and thoughtful people, doing interesting things to make the world a better place. And so, one of the things that I'm most proud of is that I have been able to do that. And I'm very grateful for
That sounds like an awesome mission.
that.
I think we should all strive for that. If you could record one historical figure's account of massage therapy, someone who is now deceased, who would it be? Maybe talk about why.
Well, one of the first questions that you asked me is if I knew anything about the history of Edith Saws, who was the dean of the Canadian College of Massage and Hydrotherapy. And my answer was no, I don't know anything about her history. So yes, she would probably be number one on that list, where we should find out more about her history and how that came to be.
Yeah, definitely. So often we forget about our teachers when we look back on things, and yeah, I love that answer. On the other side of that coin, though, who would you like to see on this podcast next? Is there a list of anyone that you think should be interviewed here and has an important story to share?
Yeah, well, I think that the all of the individuals that I have spoken about in some of the collaborative work that we've done. There's a group of Americans, Chris Moyer, Kristen Andrade, although she is now in Europe, Canadians, Kalyani Premkumar. I'm looking at her textbook here, Anatomy and Physiology of the Massage Connection. So Kalyani Premkumar was on my dissertation committee, and she has written multiple textbooks in massage therapy. She is a MD, PhD, MBA massage therapist. Now, she didn't practice here, but in her home country, that was definitely part of her work. She's an individual with, she has retired from academia, but she's an individual that has contributed hugely. I'm looking at a textbook here from Kathy Ryan on traumatic scar tissue management. Kathy has a wealth of knowledge and information at multiple levels of leadership in massage therapy in Canada. And, I'm also looking at this John Yates, Physician's Guide to Therapeutic Massage. At one point in time, this was our only really sort of resource in terms of, how to talk about benefits of massage therapy from a healthcare sort of a perspective. So that would be interesting as well. And of course, contemporaries of mine, well, Dr. Amanda Basquel and Dr. Anya Kenya Richmond. As I mentioned, we were all sort of finishing our PhDs at the same time. They will have, wealth of information. I suspect that none of us are necessarily in the center of massage therapy as a career or as a field anymore. And that would be a topic of consideration. Why is that?
Do you want to open that door right now?
Well, I think it is worth talking about because, we've been talking about where is the profession going. And I think another question is, where might people like me fit in terms of the field and how to continue to contribute? And as proud as I am of the accomplishments, I have retired from clinical work, which is just sort of interesting in and of itself. I envisioned that I was going to be doing massage therapy for forever. I envisioned myself as a tiny little old lady with grizzled hands, applying this wisdom and doing great practical work forever. I stepped away from the clinical work just really recently, not for any negative reasons in any way, shape, or form. Life just took a little bit of a direction, but I'm also not involved in leadership at the level of the field currently either, because I don't know where someone like me fits in that. I know there are some options. There's a volunteer option. There's always been a volunteer option. We've had discussions about that. At one point in time, I thought that perhaps there should be a role for a doctorally trained massage therapist in leadership that was supported, that was financially supported. I had proposed that idea, again, not throwing anybody under the bus and not throwing any shade, because I don't know that they didn't. The answer was no, and I don't know that they couldn't answer otherwise. Because the question becomes, if other people are volunteering in leadership, what makes you different? And I don't really know what the answer is but I don't know how people like me with the background that I have can or will continue to contribute. In the university system, it's very prescribed. It's very well laid out. One becomes a professor, and one has a salary, and one has a portfolio. And a portion of your portfolio is to teach, a portion of your portfolio is to research, and a portion of your portfolio is service. And you are expected to do all of those things, and you're expected to contribute greatly, and you are remunerated for your role. We don't have anything currently like that in massage therapy, so I'm not sure where that would fit. So I'll challenge you to come up with that answer.
I'm wondering, this is just the way that my mind works, is, we need to have like an association of massage therapists that have doctorates where you guys come together. I mean, like, I definitely agree with you that I think there should be a space for people like that, and also definitely a space for people who have retired from the clinical aspect of the profession but still have a lot to contribute to the profession. People get out of it and then, they're never heard from again in some cases, but I don't think that that's necessarily to our great benefit together.
Interesting.
All right, let's do some final notes real quick.
Okay.
Before we go, what is the work you're up to these days? How could listeners learn more about what you're doing, connect with you, or support what you're currently doing?
Great question, and thank you for that. So my current role, I am the director or a director in an academic unit called the Center for Integrative Medicine in the Department of Community Health and Epidemiology in the College of Medicine at the University of Saskatchewan. So we're an academic unit. So we get to do fun things. And my role as a knowledge translation academic is to figure out how we transmit, translate, transfer knowledge amongst different groups. And it is so much fun. So recently, 2 days ago, we hosted a public lecture, and a luncheon colloquium, a multidisciplinary event. Our topic happened to be substance use and addiction. So what I try to do is I learn about other researchers' work or other clinicians' work or other community leaders' work, and I try to figure out what is the intersection between these topics or individuals or organizations that would be knowledge that would be mutually beneficial for other individuals, other organizations, and other communities, and ultimately for individuals with seeking either relief of healthcare issues or perfectly acceptable to be seeking wellness, to be seeking health, to have a more salutogenic focus to it. And so that's the work that I do now. I get to read, I've got textbooks behind me and popular books written by some of the individuals that I'm collaborating with and showcasing their work. From psychology, from immunology, from biostatistics, from epidemiology, from clinical research, from arts-based therapies, from humanities-based work. So that's the work that I'm currently engaged in. I work at the university. I have a very small role in the College of Medicine, and my work is very part-time and provides me an opportunity to continue on with that mission that I mentioned.
It sounds like a great opportunity for someone, like you self-described yourself, loves to learn.
Yeah, yes, that's very true. Thanks for making that connection.
Yeah, well, and I'm wondering, it also kind of sounds like, is it similar to content creation? Because it sounds like you get to really get creative with finding that intersection.
Yeah, I think so. Although, you could fill a thimble with what I know about content creation, really. But I think there are similarities. How do we make knowledge and information palatable, interesting? Now, I have training as an epidemiologist, so most of what we structure our work around, or the framework that supports our work, is that of the determinants and distribution of disease. So it sounds like a very, sort of a dry framework, but there is a scholarship, there is academic knowledge around health and health promotion, and that is part of the population health piece, in which I have the training as well, in terms of how do we how do we help people be healthy? How do we help people be healthy? And so I get to play within that space, and it's pretty marvelous.
It sounds like kind of like this growing pain that SOMA has too, of how do we hook people and convince them that history can not be this dry, boring topic, but something you can engage in, really benefit from. So I'm definitely interested to hear more at some point. Final question, Donelda, and I'll let you run with this for as long as you like. Is there anything we didn't cover in this interview that you would like to add now? Consider the mic and the floor completely yours.
Well, thank you. I think you've done a terrific job at shepherding the interview and formulating the questions. And no, I don't think there's anything more that is burning on my mind to contribute. I know if we talked another day for another 2 hours, we could easily find more things to bring to the conversation, because it's been a pleasure talking with you, and it is a pleasure to reflect and think about the history of massage therapy, and I'm just honored and delighted that you asked.
Well, the same goes to you. I've really enjoyed the last couple hours learning about the contributions that you have made to the profession, and I want to thank you again for making the time and being here for this interview.
You're most welcome, Kirby, and thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider donating to the Society of Massage Archives, so we can continue to bring you this episode and other resources to fulfill our mission of preserving and integrating the historical knowledge of massage therapy's professional advocacy and traditional techniques to guide and enrich our contemporary practices. Thank you. You have been listening to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives. You can learn more about the Society at societyofmassagearchives.org. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. Do you know someone whose hands have helped shape the practice of massage? If you or someone you know would make a great guest for future episodes of this podcast, please email the Society at societyofmassagearchives@gmail.com. Society of Massage Archives, all one word, @gmail.com.